What? Говно, блядь.
The mechanic describes. So I'm one of those people who tries to encourage, if you're going to do an NFT, if you're going to do a token, if you have to do that stuff for whatever reason, it makes you feel good, it makes others feel good, people think it adds some kind of a value, which it might, like I'm still open to that. You do it on a Bitcoin sidechain like a liquid, because this way it's on Bitcoin and it's not clogging up the Bitcoin mempool. So that's been what I've been promoting. But maybe Mr. Hodl will go first, and he's gone, so I don't see him anymore.
But Mr. Hodl isn't an NFT artist. He's not any of that stuff. Mr. Hodl is not an NFT guy or an art, like that I know.
No, he's not. No, but he's got but he's not an NFT guy, but he can definitely have his comments, right? So he's similar to you. So I'm assuming he has similar views to you. So maybe you can just quickly explain to Vesa why NFTs and ordinals are a bad idea, and sum it up as fast as you can.
I think NFTs is a stupid way of doing something that we've done another way forever, which is just, it's like a ticket is the best example. If you buy a ticket to a concert and you try and get in and they don't let you in, then you just need to prove you paid for it. You can use a blockchain to do that if you like, but you can also use an email. And that's enough, because the rest of the world doesn't care. It's only like the legal procedure. It's just the Oracle problem again. Like, the problem with NFTs is I actually believe in intellectual property. I think it's a valid concept. I think if you steal my Bitcoins because you found out my private key, I'm not going to say, oh, they're yours now. I'm not that naive. Like, I really believe those are still mine, even though you have the private keys. But NFTs, if you violate my intellectual property by right-clicking on a picture and then pasting on Twitter, there's so little I can do about that the whole thing just becomes a complete joke. There's no benefit to anyone by doing it. You can't enforce the property rights using the blockchain. You can only point to the fact that they were established ones, and that will help you if you take anyone to court that violates your intellectual property. But no more than having an email would. No one cares. It's like there's some arguments about less friction because you don't need to go through a middleman to transfer ownership of it, maybe, but that's pretty minuscule in comparison to what the hype around it is. It's supposed to change the nature of property. You remember when that woman said, if you have an NFT of a diamond and the diamond gets destroyed, the underlying asset still exists. Like, this is laughable, man. It doesn't do anything. It's just a great big hype bubble around basically a valid concept, but taking it to this extreme where it's like you're saying, even Michael Saylor kind of fell for it. Like, if you write a will, your last will and testament, and put it on the blockchain, that's it. No one can do anything about it. I'm like, of course they can. And if they do something against your intention, you still have to go to court, and you still have to show the document. And you can say, well, it's in the blockchain. Or you can say, I have a notarized copy of it here in a safe. It doesn't make any difference when you get into the real world, because the Bitcoin blockchain can only enforce property secured by private keys. It can't secure property secured in any other way. So if you own an NFT and the minting of it happened on Bitcoin's blockchain, so what? It's not going to be able to stop you right-clicking that JPEG and posting on Twitter. Bitcoin's blockchain can't do that. So that's my whole point.
Oh, but if the provenance starts from me and you can track it back to me, what I'm trying to understand here, thanks for having the conversation, because for me, the talking with you has been a little bit like having sex with a cheese grater. It's just like outside looking in, it's funny, but doing it is kind of masochistic and bloody. So what I'm trying to understand really is that if I inscribe an artwork and it goes onto the blockchain, on the Bitcoin chain, is it actually inscribed on the chain in that even if you have two centralized different platforms that are kind of controllable, but do they not like, do they actually see the image somehow on the core chain or not? Is it somehow inscribed onto the chain, or is it just an illusion?
No, I mean, you can interpret. Bitcoin itself doesn't support like MP4 or like JPEG formats or something. Like you can't use your Bitcoin node to view this stuff. You have to use some other software that interprets the data that's hiding itself inside witness data and interprets it.
Fucking liver.
Something like that. It's a horribly inefficient way of doing this stuff. Though there is some limited utility that I can't deny. But it's also just the fact that it breaks a system that's designed for such a more significant purpose is just something that's impossible to endorse for moral reasons, because you can basically do what you need to do with existing systems. Like the idea of intellectual property being something that needs to be established inside a giant, massively redundant public database is kind of nice, but it just can't really be done without creating damage for the only structure we have for making one of those views. Bitcoin's stability comes from the fact that what it can do, and when you blow it up into other use cases, you undermine it being able to maintain that function, and then it becomes like a shit show. It becomes centralized, and then why not just upload your picture to any other website? Because you're trusting a small centralized service. And I mean, is that like that's what I'm saying? The data is going to be there in the chain, to answer your question, and the interpretation of that data is whatever software you use. Like ordinals are what they are because of the ordinals client that interprets what goes on in the blockchain a certain way. That's centralized. If that gets changed, the interpretation changes, and Bitcoin doesn't care one way or the other because it doesn't have anything to do with Bitcoin. It's an artificial system built on the top of it. So I would say that too.
Здравствуйте.
Добрый день.
Я хотел просвещать, а вы закрыты?
Я уже уехал.
Блин, ну ладно. Все, спасибо, да.
Мгм.
Like if the client that interprets the data you put into the blockchain that turns it into JPEG or whatever data you use just isn't maintained or uses, then your picture
Придурок.
basically stops existing, I would say.
Okay. Well, I still have clearly a lot to learn from it, but for me, the most important thing is provenance, because I'm hoping that, and the idea is that much after I've passed from this, I'm hoping like 200-300 years or however long it's going to be, that there would be a provenance that if I've sold something and it gets resold or whatever, that it would be, someone would be able to track it back to me publishing that image, because otherwise it'll be exactly like you say, that you can just right click and then mint it on some other chain and do all these kinds of different scams.
Dude, if you want to do that, sign it with a PGP key, and that's it. You have a PGP key that you keep secure, and only the owner with like a PGP signature can do it. Like if that's all you want, then you don't need any of this. Like you just have a receipt, and it's unforgeable. You know who like signed it. It was the artist because it's his private key. You're done. Like I don't understand why you're using all of this other stuff.
I'm looking for I'm looking for a foundation, of course, but I'm not being duplicious about the thing. But of course, I see that there's now the only place really where anyone is buying art in the sort of crypto sphere is now in ordinals.
Wait. I thought you said it was about like making sure that people can trace it back to you. If that's all it is, all you need is a digital signature. That's it. Relax.
No, not like I said, cheese grater says. It's like of course it's primarily I'm trying to establish the ethical way. Is this the way that I can do it? And of course, secondly, it's a part of me having to make a living, and this is the way that it's happening right now. And I'm trying to figure out whether this is in fact
Let me jump in because I think
or whether it's actually viable as well as maybe something like some of my stuff.
I think the reason it's unethical is because people don't run nodes to store a redundant copy of anyone's art, and it's not what they signed up for. So dumping it on them is just not that is the essence of something non-consensual, and it's very evident when people like Udi keep saying, thanks for storing my JPEGs on your hard drives forever. It's got this like rapey undertone of, I'm forcing you to do something that you can't prevent from happening even if you want to, and it's fucking gross. Like it's really nasty. It really does have that lack of consent element to it that they're sort of proud about, and they like the fact that it's difficult to do anything about it. And this is ultimately one problem with stamps exploiting bare multisig as well, and there being no justification for it. It's not on the network to store a redundancy for your multisig scheme, and that is financial, right? Store whatever you need for your multisig to be spendable again yourself. You don't need to use the chain for that, because ultimately the nodes keep a perfect history of the financial history of Bitcoin, because they need to know it. I need to know every UTXO that happens so I can verify when you're paying me what that is. If you start stowing away data that's about pictures that are of interest to you and people you sell to and all that, that's not what nodes want to be doing. It's not why they paid for the hardware to set up, and they don't get paid by like miners do. Miners get paid to do what they do. Nodes don't. So when anyone comes along and says, hey, we can just use the network to do this and that, they never ever take into consideration, why would a node want to store a redundant copy of a JPEG rather than 70,000 nodes? Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I have no incentive to do that. The more you ask them to do that, the less inclined they will be to do it, and then that's how we just all go down together. You don't get the permanence of the redundant storage, and we don't get perfect. It all just suddenly becomes shitcoin. It becomes, oh, we can do this, but actually in reality we're just centralized and basically fiat 2.0.
Okay, gotta move on to
I gotta go.
За уроды, блядь, патроны мои.
I gotta go, but I wanted to show you my cookies. Alright, these are keto, paleo, they just came out of the air fryer, and I'm doing recipes for lazy men to make dessert and, super yummy shit on a keto recipe. I'll let you know how it goes.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Doug.
Okay, I'll be back.
I'm going to have Bitcoin Archive go next. We do have Bitcoin Archive with us. He is an anonymous.
I gotta
Guys, simple comments. You got to mute. Thank you.
I gotta go, but I wanted to show you my cookies. Alright, these are keto, paleo,
comments. You got to mute.
air fryer, and I'm doing recipes for lazy men to make dessert.
You got to mute. Thanks. And you got to close the stream. Otherwise, I'll be able to be getting feedback. Real quick, Vesa, what at the end of the day, right? And I learned this back in 2015 by listening to some
Дерьмо, блядь.
Bitcoin maxis after who the name was made. Vitalik Buterin came up with the term Bitcoin maximalist to describe Bitcoin Uncensored podcast, and they constantly used to say, stop treating Bitcoin as free infinite data storage. And because it's not that. Mechanic?
I was saying that's it.
Yeah. It's not, there's no such thing as infinite free data storage, right? Like, we're streaming this on YouTube, and this is going to be a 12-hour stream, and I'm doing it for free on YouTube, but it's not.
Последний, что ли, был?
YouTube is sticking ads into the stream, even though I don't want ads on the stream, and they're using me as a guinea pig for all the data, and they're collecting all the data. There's no such thing as free data storage, and Bitcoin is no different. So when people, stuff ordinals into the Bitcoin blockchain, someone is paying that for. It may not be EU, but it's the network itself, and it's the people that operate the node are paying the ultimate price. And eventually, if they give up, it becomes tragedy of the commons. Like a lot of us won't give up. I mean, Bitcoin will get through this, but people need to be more aware of what they're sticking into the Bitcoin blockchain. Alright,
No, I totally get it. This is my concern from the get-go, is that this is going to ruin something. But essentially what I did is I tried to put as high quality of an image there as I did. I did about 5 of them. They cost about $300 to $500 to put them. And I thought they were kind of aligned with what I was about high quality, high quality, potentially won't do what I thought it could do, and then it'll just clog up the chain, then I'll just stop doing it. These are the first 5 experiments that I'm doing. How that goes. I'm just
Voilà, mon jeu.
from there, but you know, I'll really go. But thank you so much for having
Ouais.
me.
Ça, c'est trop. Je ne vois pas. Je ne vois pas.
Thanks for coming back, and yeah, I'll see you in Dubai, and I'll try to see everybody in Dubai. So, come up, you know what floods, geopolitics and stuff. All right, I really want to get to Bitcoin archive. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be on camera. Tries to be anonymous, and we've let me not get into the detail, but incredible, 1.4 million followers on Twitter, provides incredible insight. Hopefully you can unmute and say a few words. Bitcoin archive, floor is yours.
Hey guys, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, well, I really don't have too much to say except thank you for inviting me on our discussion. It's a shame it has to be cut short. I wanted it to continue.
I could make one point about it quickly, which is like a positive suggestion. The best thing you can do when it comes to
Stand
storing
by.
arbitrary data and using Bitcoin to do it,
Alright.
that no one really
Stay
complains about
close.
is open timestamps. Because you're doing something that's reasonable, which is just proving that something
Right.
takes at a time. So you can hash pictures that you've drawn, or even hash an agreement you made that it belonged to a certain person, and stick that in the chain because it won't take up much space at all, as opposed to actually uploading the JPEG. And then you can just point to something if there's ever a dispute in the real world. You can point back to it and say, this thing happened at that block height.
Pourquoi moi j'ai pas.
If no one has any demonstration or anything happened prior to that, then you're in a good spot. And because it's a hash, it barely uses any data.
On m'a donné. Les gars,
This is what Nick so
pourquoi?
suggested.
Tu vois, t'as les marqueurs là.
Store hashes of the chain.
J'ai dit, c'est mon champagne. Elle m'a dit, peut-être que c'est pas un rayon.
Virtualize it first. And that, when people
Bah,
do
comme
that,
je te disais, t'habiller. Hein.
what it's designed for, but it's not wasteful and it has like.
C'est bon, pourquoi t'as regardé les bureaux de l'enfant?
Moi, c'est pas grave,
C'est autant. Mais qu'est-ce qu'elle a dit après ça? Elle a dit, mais là, tout directement.
What's standing in the way?
Vas-y, j'ai dit, je t'ai dit, tout le monde.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for the comment.
Et juste, t'as envie de t'es Bon, je sais que
You said no.
en fait, c'est une arnaqueuse en fait.
Doing that.
Yeah, as in
En plus, sur une autre fois, moi, je vais rigoler avec toi. Non.
chain dating instead of block chain that have been blockchain.
Yeah.
So
Apparemment, tu fais Lily. Petite abonnée. En tout cas, va Lily ailleurs. C'est possible.
If you do step one, if you create more friction to get spam into the
Attends.
then
Oui, tu peux que vous allez continuer d'argent, non?
to the point where
Allô?
you don't really mind to have
Voilà. Comme quoi, comme vous
timestamps are in there.
Moi, j'ai réfléchi. Vous allez voir. Quand ils sont.
The guy sat next to me for like a minute. We spoke on the couch. He was saying he used open timestamps to keep an election honest in Guatemala, and it actually stopped the rigging of an election. That's legit. That's a real use case, and I'm happy about it. As a node runner, I don't mind that stuff happening, and I don't think anyone does. I'm curious if you have anything to add, Jimmy, to this perspective.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, even like hashes and stuff, there are other tools. People act like Bitcoin is the only tool that exists. There are lots of other things. If you want attribution, if you want to authenticate stuff, there's like digital signatures, stuff like that. There's timestamp servers. There's stuff. There are all kinds of things that you can use. This insistence that people use the Bitcoin blockchain for X, Y, or Z is just idiotic because it's just, I want the attention, but I don't want to actually look for the best tool for the job. I don't have much sympathy for people that are insisting on using Bitcoin for X, Y, or Z. Yeah, it might work, but there are lots of other tools that are way better and way more efficient.
the only reason you want it on Bitcoin is either like sort of as like a social griefing attack against Bitcoin maximalists, which is mostly what a lot of this stuff is, especially stuff like stamps, or it's a way to scam more people or to make it seem like something that it isn't, which is, oh, I'm supporting the Bitcoin network by paying fees or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's all scammy to me, and I don't like this idea. Okay, like there are all these other use cases that you can use it for. No, you have bad engineers, or you're like you're briefing people, or you're doing something that you really shouldn't, committing fraud.
I know about this project with the voting stuff. Maybe I can add a little bit of color. Tell me if there's another solution. But the thing is that once they count the votes, the records of that go somewhere, and in the future those records get changed. So actually the count that was done on that day, there's no way to know for sure whether the count got changed in the future. So the guys that are doing this, they're basically putting the count, on the time chain. So that way in the future, at any point, they can look back and say, okay, this for sure did not get changed, right? We know this thing to be immutable. So is there another solution that would be, as immutable?
I mean, a lot of people use like archive or whatever. You could also like go to a timestamp server and get something signed at a particular point, and they'll countersign it and so on. There's lots of it. It's just kind of I mean, like that is kind of a way to do it, especially if you're like limited on resources or whatever. But I mean, engineering is sort of like the art of figuring out like the best solution for something, and optimizing in all kinds of ways to make it practical. There are a lot of these projects. Put it on Bitcoin. Let's get the attention. It's a good.
Well, that's the worst thing about it, right? Because drawing a line in the sand between is difficult. Drawing a line in the sand is even harder. Tokens, stuff like
No.
Bitcoin or sats, which likely will use those words just to confuse newbies. And like they'll confuse people that like in Asian markets and stuff where they don't like Bitcoin Twitter is English, right? I don't know if there's like a Chinese equivalent or a Korean equivalent. Like so I feel like scams are happening over there and people are getting confused and buying tokens called things like sats. And that's just gonna be so difficult to make people think,
Stay in building.
Stuff on Bitcoin is a scam. Like it's I don't want to have to fight that battle.
I want to move the discussion along a little bit. We can always come back to this topic. Had a few people join us. I see Josh, see Joe Calasari, Crypto Commons down in Argentina where they have a house. They mostly do trading stuff. I do want to give Gary Gerritsen the mic for a minute. He's just going to introduce himself. He's been on the stream for a while in a giant chair. Gary Gerritsen helps run the live stream of the unconfiscatable event. Big supporter, helps out, volunteer. Gary Gerritsen, say a few words, and then we'll let Crypto Commons say a few words, and then we'll get Joe Calasari's take. Dr. Jeff was with us for a little while. Unfortunately, we didn't catch him back in here because we were having the discussion on mempool. But Gary, go for it.
You were right. It's a little tough to keep up with everybody coming on and off, and yeah, it's getting a little chaotic. But yeah, just keeping track of a couple things. Just super. I kind of like, I've said this before, kind of a hardware guy. So just about anything from an ASIC miner to a graphics card to a CPU, like that's basically what I do. Bitcoin hodler, been hodling for a long time, and I used to work mostly as basically a pipe fitter, so I'd work in like your refineries, your steel mills, things like that. But kind of do a lot less of the other two, which is great.
Let's go over to Crypto Commons. Green Joe, say a few words. How's over there? And
Oh putain.
Who are they, noobs?
Yeah, seems so. Good job.
Go gank it.
Try again.
It was like one of unique, one in the world. So let's hope this will be the second. It can be bigger, longer, I don't know. We will see.
guys, very glad to see you. Yeah, I can say a few words about Bitcoin maybe because to be honest with you, I do not know much about new Argentinian president originally from Russia. I know much more about Russian president. Just know, allow me to share screen. We get arrested. You start crying. Just know that's we are seeing now. First and last time coming outside. If you go outside,
on charts and
It's disgusting.
Bitcoin, try not to take more than 3 minutes. Just do a quick overview on your charts.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Let me find my chart. I just wanted to say a few words about BTC and about recent price action. Let me try to share now.
Yeah, Crypto Comments, he has a very popular YouTube channel, over 100,000 followers in Russian, and recently started an English-speaking channel as well. I've been a guest a couple of times.
Yes, we will try to pump it in the future. Let's see. Let's go to the... now it's called Super Chart. Let's go to Super Chart. Yeah, what do we see here? We see these yellow lines, as you may already get. This is halving lines. This is approximate line.
Что ты делаешь?
Actually, I think it's 2 days maybe later, but in this scale it's okay. So we see that we are facing the fourth Bitcoin halving, and the most different thing in this time, in this season, and this is that we broke all-time high before the halving. I think all you know. So in terms of this, I wanted to point out that maybe this time is different because we see a lot of things coming out. I mean, a lot of we see a big bubble on the stock market, on real estate market, and we see this war happening and all these things. So I think in terms of money printing, in terms of inflation, maybe this time is different because previous cycles we saw like pretty much normal kind of things. But what we see after COVID, I mean, money printer and all this stuff, I think maybe we are maybe this time is different, and we can go even higher than everyone expects. If we are looking at some metrics and indicators, everything is pretty much the same. We see bullish momentum, we see green money flow, we see bullish RSI, but as I said before, we broke all-time high before the halving. This happened first time. So if we measure how much do we go up after the halvings, we can see that we increasing 100x, then we increased 30x, 35x.
Wow. Wow. Ranked battle royale.
4x, and then we saw smaller movement, but it was 8x. I mean 700%, 8x. But now this time is different because we are already at all-time highs. So now, if we are looking in conservative, even 200 or 300%, it can we can go much higher, I mean, in terms of expectations. So I don't know, guys. I wanted to ask you a question, and somebody can answer after me, because if we look at Bitcoin in terms of money printer, I mean, if we use BLX, which is by the way Tonway's first.
Right, Rudy, you gotta finish up. You gotta finish up.
Yeah.
I gotta move on to other people.
Yeah, please. I want to ask some other speakers. I mean, what do you think about this? If we look at BLX to money M1 SL, I mean money printer, we didn't broke even the previous all-time high. I mean, we didn't broke even 20k in terms of this. So maybe someone say that this is not accurate metric, but anyway, if you look at M2 SL, or maybe, what do you think about this time, guys?
Alright, let me take over screen share, and I'll go from here. And I'm gonna hand it off to Joe to mention it as well. Let me just adjust this. So I grab screen share real quick. So I do think it's going to be a very bullish market. I have my chart, and I have to pull up the chart. Give me 1 second. I need to pull up a specific chart, and then I will go over to Joe. Load chart layout. I just made this chart recently. Time to halving. I think it was this one, and I think it's going to be a big. Expecting a nice bull run in the upcoming halving. So after today, this will be what it will look like, and I am expecting a top in Bitcoin, like it usually comes, somewhere between March of next year and say October of next year. And I really want to know what Joe thinks about this. I personally do not pay any attention of the price of Bitcoin versus how much money is being printed. I think those two metrics are completely independent and have absolutely nothing to do with each other. I'm gonna come off screen and share. I could expand on that, but people hear me all the time on this channel, and I see Joe shaking his head that he agrees. So I will let Joe Calasari explain why money printing and the price of Bitcoin are just like money printing and gold price have nothing to do with each other. And then maybe Dr. Jeff, who's back, will weigh in as well. And welcome Tatiana Moros to the show. Joe, floor is yours.
Thanks for having me on. I'm going to go quick because I know there's a lot of great speakers. And I got to tell you, I am so bullish after the price action today. I measure data, as you know, Tone, from the older time traditional assets against Bitcoin. I try to look at comparisons quite a bit. One of the things that got me so excited is today we set a record, I think, of a top 4 or 5 all-time negative correlations between Bitcoin and the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ sold off really hard today. I don't know if you saw the legacy markets. I know this isn't a traditional finance podcast. We're talking about Bitcoin here, but there's very seldom these days where you have the NASDAQ down 2% and the Bitcoin actually finished up on the day. So that's really exciting, alongside like the 10-year, which has been selling up pretty hard. It's up like 55 pips since the middle of March. You have the VIX up nearly 4% today. If you just look at those metrics, for Bitcoin to be positive today, hanging in there above 60K, man, that is incredibly bullish in my mind. And so it's really exciting, going into the halving with all this. But one thing I think that is really interesting and people have to focus on right here about Bitcoin's price, although in nominal terms, we have made a new all-time high, I still view this as largely the warm-up for the Bitcoin bull market. And the reason for that is that I don't think we actually made an all-time high in real terms. If you're adjusting the amount of inflation we've had, which has been significant, right? 40-year highs, the most inflation we've had that any of us had experienced, or at least most of us on the stream in our lifetime. Bitcoin's real all-time high in real So my view of it is a little bit more nuanced. I think that there are catalysts that come from additional liquidity, and I don't measure liquidity the same as everybody else. People look at M2 supplies. I look at really broader measures of liquidity, risk on environments, bank balance sheet capacities, and the private
Stand
sector
by.
drives the price up. But okay, to your point, Bitcoin is still such a small market, right? Although it has liquidity that drives behind it, I think the adoption curves and the curves between people that are long-term hodlers coming in at the bottom of the bear market and then distributing at the higher peaks, that is the primary factor driving that market. Even with the ETFs, right? I still think the spot buying of Bitcoin in the regular market by the hodler community is still the primary factor, and there's data to back this up. And if you look at total inflows into the ETFs since we've had, we're about 13 billion, okay? 13 billion. We've had broader inflows coming from tether purchases off seas Bitcoin price actions in the last 60 days. So, tell me how the $13 billion ETF flows are controlling this market. I don't see it. But in any event, very bullish, very excited, and we can start the conversation there.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. And for those that don't follow Joe Colasari on Twitter, you absolutely should. I'll pull up his. Hopefully, you can stick around for a while. You don't have any plans the rest of the day, and we'll pull up more Twitter and all the rest. That being said, do you have any comments on overall money printing and money liquidity and Bitcoin, and after your take on these might be?
Sure. So the way you're setting it up, Tony, I tend to look at, and hey Joe, by the way, I love your comments. I tend to look at what our liquidity flow is doing around the world, and most people spend their time focusing on what the Fed is doing, and I think that traditionally has been very important to do. But I think recently, in recent history, a lot of people have been fooled by fiscal dominance. Right? A lot of people didn't expect the government to be borrowing so much money and spending so much money, and what people didn't expect was that the economy didn't actually ever head into a recession here in the United States. And I think that threw a lot of people for a loop. I still see a ton of people, and for whatever reason, they all seem to be Gen X boomers, and I'm a Gen X. I'm right in the middle of the Gen X age range, and for some reason, there's just tons of doomers in this range that are still calling for a recession and still calling for the markets to crash. And I can't get on board with that. It looks like that we've been in a manufacturing recession specifically for about a year and a half or so, but that has actually bottomed and is now getting better. So the manufacturing, which was holding the rest of the country down a little bit, is now back on the upward. The U.S. economy is only a 30% manufacturing economy, and is actually about a 70% services-based economy. So services dominate here in the U.S. Services never really went into any kind of contraction, and that's what kept us from falling into a recession. So the economy, for its part, is doing really well, and I think it's bottomed and now on the way back up again. Why does all of that matter? When the economy is doing better, banks start loaning more. When banks start loaning more, they create more debt. They expand basically the global monetary supply, both in the U.S. and across the world. When that happens, that naturally flows out into the risk curve and across the risk curve. And so that's what I think acts as a tailwind. It's not the primary driver or the only driver, but it is a definite tailwind for the price of Bitcoin. I share Joe's sentiment that I think that even though the next couple of months who knows what the price of Bitcoin can do, it can go lower, it can trend sideways, I don't know. But I do know that based on past cycles and based on where I think the business cycle is going, that things are going to get much better as we head into the end of 2024 and as we head into 2025. Good feedback. But one last thing that I would say is I hear a lot of people talking about how we've reached a new all-time high already, and that's what makes this cycle different. I very strongly hold to the tenet, and I know I'm in the minority here, but that the 2021 bull market was an anomaly. If China had not banned Bitcoin mining, I think that Bitcoin cycle, the bull market, would have gone much higher. I still hold that the price of Bitcoin should have hit above 100K, and I would have said about 125K based on past cycles. Why does that matter? I've been saying for several months now that if we follow past cycle patterns, that at the halving, which happens to be in a couple of hours from now, that the price of Bitcoin should be between $62,500 and $75,000. We're sitting at 64.4 right now. Where do I get that? Because from the previous cycles, and I know we've only had a couple, but from previous cycles, at the following halving, the price is 50 to 60% of the prior high. So if the prior high should have been about 125K, that puts us at 62.5 to 75,000. I would contend that we actually truly haven't hit a new all-time high, not based on what should have happened. And that Bitcoin is just doing what it does. It's kind of mathematical in the way it works. We're right where we should be right now, and that's why I hold to my next cycle peak in the fourth quarter of 2025 of 475,000. I think we're right on track for that happening, and I'm very optimistic like Joe. I'll stop there.
Whoa, that is a really monster target of over 400,000 by the end of the next cycle, going into the end of 2025. We've got 2 years to get there. I do have it on my screen right now, the past cycles. And so I did it kind of differently. So in this case, I started the very first cycle, which gets us a little bit out of control. It points to like $150 million price of Bitcoin. Obviously, it's not going to go up like it did in the very first cycle. But even if Bitcoin goes up like it did in this past cycle, which was the most depressed cycle we've had so far, even if it mimics what it did last cycle, it does put Bitcoin at $400,000 early on in 2025. And so if that's if it matches like the slowest growth path, which was this past cycle. So real quick to answer the question directly, the reason why I don't pay attention to like M2 money supply and all that other stuff is because a lot of that money doesn't actually enter the real economy. That's one reason. And it kind of stays in the Federal Reserve System, and it doesn't really enter anywhere. And the other reason is Bitcoin is a speculative asset. And it doesn't matter how much money is being printed. If people think Bitcoin is useless and it's collapsing, they're going to sell it. And same thing with gold. Like if people like gold hasn't gone up in the last 20, 30 years with all the money printing that we had. And the reason is because as time passes over the last 20, 30 years, the modern technology and the fact that the world isn't losing electricity is continuing to make gold totally useless to society. And that's why it hasn't gone up and it hasn't kept up with inflation and it hasn't kept up with money printing. Gold is going up right now, and that's pure speculation because of like global fear that the wars are coming and people want to rush into some kind of safe asset. It's not worth the amount of money printing at all. And Bitcoin is no different. Bitcoin is like gold but on steroids because it's all has to do with speculation, regardless of whether the government prints or not. Joe, you have something to say to that?
No, I'm just saying, so you're both illustrating the point, you're looking at it sort of differently. What Jeff's talking about, as I understand it, is broader liquidity in the market, which is driven primarily by private banks, okay? You're looking at the M2 and saying M2 doesn't make sense because none of these bank reserves don't actually enter into the real economy. So I don't see any contradiction between the two things that you're saying. Because the private sector providing liquidity to the market is what drives the credit impulse, is what drives the real economy to accelerate, and it drives assets higher.
All right, great comments. We got a couple of more people that have joined us. I see Zender. Didn't expect you to be on camera. You used to like to stay anonymous, but you're becoming more and more open to showing your face. I'll pull up your Twitter handle and go ahead and say a few words, and I'll see you in a few days.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hi everybody. Open here because we have a lot of history conversation that we can't agree with. But just look with about testing reworks for blocks and instance, and I thought it's very interesting. And for me, ordinals, I think they're stupid, but
Блядские пидора.
that's how Bitcoin is supposed to work. I think like people start to understand, or not like IPs and think of, Bitcoin should be cheap because that's what people heard a long time ago. The block, the
Ты чё, дурак, блядь?
What I think it will show is that reworks are part of Bitcoin, and people should get used to them. Because in a future where we have low